There is another setback for India in United Nations. The intergovernmental negotiations have now been deferred to next 78th session of United Nations General Assembly. India as a member of G4 and L69 group is striving hard for reform in the representation of the United Nations Security Council, the UNSC. Lot of changes have happened in the world with remarkable changes in geopolitical order, but UNSC representation has not accommodated the current world viewpoint. India's permanent representative to United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, on agenda item 125 that reads question of equitable representation on an increase in the membership of the Security Council and other matters related to the Security Council said, and I quote, Mr. President, we have been consistent in our position that the rollover decision of the IGN simply cannot be reduced to a mindless technical exercise. As the only formal GA outcome that emerges from this process each year, it must also evolve and reflect the progress achieved during our deliberations. We were therefore encouraged with your efforts to introduce in the decision a small reflection of this evolution based on your wide-ranging consultations and the recommendations of the co-chairs with regard to webcasting and beginning of a digital repository. I must say, though, that even with these so-called changes, there has been no breakthrough whatsoever that may be described as progress. This state of affair is clearly in the interest of those who seek a status quo, to keep this process frozen in repetitive cycles. Unquote. The United Nations Security Council currently has 5 members, which are United States, Russia, France, UK and China, and 10 non-permanent members. Non-permanent members are those for 2 years. Since the formation of the United Nations after the end of World War II, this membership structure remained almost same. To change structure, it is important first to know what requires to change it. The Chapter 5, Article 23, Clause 1 of UN Charter states the permanent members of the Security Council. Secondly, according to Chapter 18, Chapter 108, quote, amendments to the present charter shall come into force for the members of the United Nations when they have been adopted by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the General Assembly and ratified in accordance with their respective constitutional processes. Why? 2/3 of the members of the United Nations, including all the permanent members of the Security Council, unquote. So, it is noteworthy that the only way to make any amendment to the UN, one would have to amend the Charter. That means, if India wants to become permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, the UNSC, India would require full support of 2/3 of the General Assembly and all votes of the 5 permanent members, P5. While India had become non-permanent member in UNSC on 8 occasions till now, and Dr. S. Jaishankar already declared India's candidature again for 2028-29 term, India is still struggling to get a permanent seat in UNSC. In UN history, since its formation as a successor to League of Nations, there have only been 2 changes made so far in UNSC. The first change was in 1971 when name of Republic of China, which we know as Taiwan, to the People's Republic of China, the PRC. And the second one was made in 1991 when the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics name was changed to the Russian Federation. India in April 2005 submitted a formal proposal to the UN General Assembly titled Reforming the United Nations Need for Expansion of the Security Council. This proposal called for the expansion of the UNSC, including the addition of permanent seats, and highlighted India's qualifications for permanent membership based on the size, population, economic strength, and global influence. Besides G4, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Mexico, and Indonesia also expressed their desire to have a permanent seat in UNSC. It is interesting to note that while Brazil, Japan, Germany and South Africa desire to have a permanent seat, unlike India, none of them applied formally. India gets opposition from China, but Germany doesn't meet opposition from anyone of the P5. But UNSC is already too West dominated, so Germany cannot be allowed all alone. So therefore, a case is also being made for South Africa and Brazil. But if one of them gets in, how can India be denied? At the moment, Russia, US, UK and France support India's inclusion in UNSC as permanent member, but it is only China that is opposing it. The frustration of lingering process is swelling and can be seen by one and all. India's ambassador to UN, Ruchira Kamboj, added, and I quote her, quote, "As a responsible and constructive member of the United Nations, India will of course continue to engage in this process alongside our reform-minded partners and persist with our efforts to move from repetitive speeches to text-based negotiations. However, for those of us who truly wish to fulfill our leaders' commitment towards an early and comprehensive reform of the UN Security Council, looking beyond the IGN looks increasingly to us as the only viable pathway to a future UN Security Council that would better reflect the world of today." Unquote. India, as a responsible member, not only is one of the largest contributor of troops to UN peace missions, but also help nations across the world for humanitarian and developmental work. So what you have to say about deferring of intergovernmental negotiations to the next session of the UN, please do write your comment, your feedback in the comment box. Thanks for watching National Defense. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.